The bell over the diner door kept ringing like it was making fun of me, bright and cheerful, while my coffee cooled into something bitter and my phone stayed quiet in my pocket. No. Running late. No. Sorry. Just silence with a receipt attached. Outside, rain stitched lines down the window. Inside, the neon open sign buzzed with a thin electrical whine that didn't belong in the room, like a mosquito trapped behind glass. The overhead fluorescence gave a tiny flicker so fast most people wouldn't catch it. I did. I always do. Across the aisle, a man in a bulky jacket laughed too loud and said, "You got a real menu, or just the sad one?" Like he'd paid for the right to be difficult. The waitress didn't flinch, but I saw her shoulders tighten before she turned, with a smile that looked trained for impact. The kind of smile that gets you through a shift and then disappears as soon as you're alone by the sink. I'd come here for a date. The kind that required a babysitter, a clean shirt, and the small optimism you only buy when your kid is asleep and you're trying to remember you're still a person. The date had turned into a two-line text, "Sorry." Something came up right as I'd pulled into the lot. I stayed anyway. The sitter was paid by the hour, and my life has a way of charging me whether I enjoy the moment or not. The waitress moved between tables with a tray balanced like it weighed nothing. Up close, I caught the details that mattered. A faint flour streak on her apron, a small cut on one knuckle, a ring of keys clipped to her waistband that chimed softly when she walked. That key ring wasn't decoration. It was a job title in metal. She slipped behind the counter and answered a call in a low voice. "No," she said, controlled. "I can't just close early. The notice is still on the back door." Notice. That word hit harder than the canceled date. It had weight, consequences. When she hung up, she pressed two fingers to her temple, then smoothed the front of her apron like she could flatten the day with her palm. The overhead light flickered again. The loud guy at the booth called, "Hey, sweetheart," and my jaw tightened without asking permission. I stood. Not fast. Fast looks guilty. I stepped into the aisle and angled my body so she had a clean line past his booth. "Ma'am," I said, holding up the menu like I genuinely needed help. "Can I ask you something about the pie?" Her eyes snapped to me, quick assessment. No wasted time, and then she pivoted like I'd handed her a door. "What do you need?" she asked, voice level, eyes already scanning the room like she was counting exits. "Two things," I said. "One, does the pie come warm, or is it a gamble?" The smallest twitch at the corner of her mouth. "Warm, always." "And two," I added, lowering my voice, "your open sign is buzzing like it has a loose connection or a tired transformer. That normal here?" Her gaze flicked to the window. The neon buzzed again, sharp and wrong. "No," she said too quick. Then she caught herself. "It started last week." "Okay," I said. "That matters." She didn't ask why. People like her don't waste questions on obvious problems. They bank their energy for the next fire. "Name?" she asked, and I realized she wasn't flirting. She was collecting facts the way I collect readings. "Johnny," I said. "Pie, please." "Catalea," she replied, and slid away with the tray like she'd never stopped moving. The pie arrived with steam and cinnamon. Catalea set it down and, without a word, set the check beside it, efficient, anticipating what tired people forget. "You didn't have to do that," she said quietly, meaning the menu interruption. "I didn't do much," I said. "Just change the angle." Her eyes moved to the buzzing sign again, and then, like the universe had timing issues, the back door opened and a man walked in with a clipboard. He didn't look for a seat. He looked up at the lights, then at the neon, then at the hallway marked "Employees Only." Catalea's keys chimed once as her hand tightened at her waist. "Evening," the man said, not to the room but to the paper in his hand. "Inspector Kelly. I'm here about the electrical complaint." Complaint meant someone had filed something official. It meant the county had a timestamp. It meant the diner wasn't just tired, it was on record. A young server behind the counter, Sage, I'd heard Catalea call her, froze mid-motion with a ketchup bottle in her hand. Catalea stepped in front of Sage without thinking, like a reflex. "We're aware of an issue," she said. "We're addressing it." Inspector Kelly's pen scratched. "The owner has been addressing it for 6 months. Owner." There it was again. The invisible person who could ruin everyone's week by not answering a phone. "I need proof of correction or a licensed service report within 72 hours, Kelly said. "If this is an active hazard, I issue a safety shutdown until corrected." The diner changed temperature without changing the thermostat. Forks paused. Even the fryer hiss sounded louder. Cataleya's jaw locked. She didn't plead. She didn't argue. She looked at the clipboard, then at the buzzing sign, then at her keys like she was choosing between two bad options. And I realized something else, fast. Those keys weren't just for doors. They were for keeping people employed. I stood again and walked toward the counter, keeping my hands visible. "Inspector," I said, "I'm a licensed industrial electrician. I'm not on their payroll. I'm just eating pie. But I can do a preliminary safety check right now, if they grant access." Cataleya turned to me sharply, and I saw warning and hope in the same look. Kelly's eyes narrowed. "You have a meter?" I nodded and tapped the bag by my booth. "Calibrated." Cataleya swallowed once, then said, "I can open the panel room." Kelly's pen stopped. "Do you have legal authority to authorize access?" Cataleya reached under the counter and pulled out a thin envelope creased, opened and closed too many times. She placed it on the laminate like it was evidence. "Acting manager agreement," she said. "Signed by the owner. It gives me facility access and control of daily operations." She hesitated, then pushed it a little closer to the inspector. "It also gives him the right to replace me without notice." My stomach tightened. That was leverage. Clear. Contractual. Not a vibe and instrument. Kelly flipped it open, scanned, and nodded once. Cataleya looked at me, and her voice dropped low enough that only I could hear. "If this place shuts down," she said, "I don't just lose a job. I lose payroll this week, and he'll use that clause to swap me out and blame the mess on me." She lifted her keys slightly. "He controls the safe code. He controls the vendor account. He can freeze the card that buys eggs by morning." That was the first time she said it plainly. Keeping the diner open wasn't pride. It was survival math. I didn't know her personal story yet, who taught her to run a shift, what she'd lost, what she was trying to keep, but I didn't need those details to understand the numbers. I had my own numbers. A sitter paid by the hour, a kid who needed dinner and a ride to school, a field trip fee sitting in my jacket pocket like a small threat. I nodded once. "Okay," I said. "We do it by the book." Cataleya's shoulders dropped half an inch, like "by the book" was the first safe thing she'd heard all day. We moved into the back hallway. It smelled like bleach, onions, and old coffee. The air warmed near the kitchen, heavy with fryer exhaust, and the low, constant hum of equipment that never gets a day off. Cataleya unlocked a metal door, marked electrical. The sound of the key turning was too loud in the narrow hall. Kelly hovered just behind my shoulder. "Inspectors do that. They stand close enough to catch you thinking about cutting corners." Sage hovered behind Cataleya, eyes wide, hands wringing a damp rag. I set my tool bag on the floor and opened it with the care you use around live current. Meter, insulated gloves, flashlight, torque screwdriver. I didn't say I was top tier. I let the tools and the order of operations speak for me. "First," I said, more to myself than anyone, "visual inspection. Smell, scorch marks, loose knockouts, then verify voltage, then isolate." Cataleya watched me like she was trying to memorize the steps, not my face. Kelly's pen scratched again. "Proceed." I pulled on my gloves, popped the panel cover, and kept the screws in a magnetic tray so none of them ended up in a drain or someone's shoe. The metal of the panel was cool under my fingers, and the hum behind it was steady, which was the first decent sign I'd had all night. I checked line to neutral. The readings held, then fluttered small, inconsistent. I traced the sign circuit to the neutral bar, and the moment I touched the lead there, the number wavered again. "There," I said, angling my flashlight. A neutral conductor was seated, but the screw had backed off a fraction enough to cause flicker, enough to cause heat, enough to turn buzzing sign into hazard. Kelly leaned in. "That's a violation." "It's a fix," I said, steady. "Violation is if we leave it that way." I set my torque screwdriver to spec and tightened until it clicked. Not tight enough. Correct. Cataleya's breath went out slowly, like the click had reached her ribs. I rechecked the reading. Stable now. Then I moved to the junction box feeding the neon transformer and found a tape splice with the wrong connector, a cheap bandage wrapped around a real risk. Cataleya's jaw tightened when she saw it. "That wasn't me," she said. Not defensive, just factual. "I know," I replied. "We document. We correct." I replaced the connector with the proper rated one, secured the splice, and labeled the box. Then I wrote a preliminary service note on my carbonless form. Observed fault, corrective action, recommendation for full evaluation and permit-compliant work plan. I signed it. License number included. Time-stamped. Real. Kelly took the paper, read it, and his expression didn't soften, but it changed shape. "This buys you 72 hours, he said to Katalea. "I will return. If there's another complaint, if I see another flicker, I can move faster." Katalea nodded once. "Understood." Kelly looked at me. "Submit a formal report within 72 hours. Permit required for any work beyond minor correction." "I know the rules," I said. He tucked my note into his folder and walked back toward the dining room, leaving the hallway colder than it had been. Katalea stayed by the panel door, fingertips resting on the metal like she needed something solid. "Thank you," she said, and her voice held steady until the last word, where it frayed just a little. I pulled my gloves off, rolled them, put them away. "You're welcome." Sage stepped forward and blurted, "I'm sorry. I told someone about the flicker because I thought like safety." Katalea turned to her, and the way her face softened told me something important. She ran this place with discipline, but she protected her people. "You did the right thing," Katalea told Sage. "We just have to be better than the shortcuts." Sage nodded hard and retreated, wiping her eyes with her sleeve like she was embarrassed by needing to blink. Katalea looked down at my business card still on the counter, now slightly smudged with coffee, and then back at me. "I'm going to say something," she said, "and you can say no." I waited. "That's the dad reflex? Let the ask land clean. Can I hire you?" she asked. "Not as a favor. As a job. Tonight. I need a real report, and I need a plan on paper before the owner tries to make this about me." I felt my exhaustion flare hot at the back of my neck, the way it does when another responsibility tries to climb on my shoulders. I thought about my kid's lunch packed in the fridge, the sitter paid too long already, the permission slip in my pocket. Then I thought about the clause she'd just shown the inspector. Replace me without notice. Freeze the card. Lock the safe. This wasn't a romance pitch. It was a survival contract. "What's the offer?" I asked. Because boundaries are part of doing it right. Katalea unfolded a slip of paper with a number written in neat block letters lower than my normal emergency rate, higher than what she should have been able to promise without fear. "And," she added, swallowing once, "I'll feed you. Real food. Not just pie." My stomach chose that moment to remind me I'd been running on coffee and disappointment. "Okay," I said. "On one condition." Her eyes sharpened. "Name it." "We do it by the book," I said. "No cash fixes. No guessing. We document everything. If the owner pushes back, it's on paper. With dates." Katalea's shoulders loosened like she'd been waiting for those exact words. "Deal," she said, and held out her hand. I hesitated a beat just enough to keep it professional, then shook once. Firm. Brief. The diner bell rang again out front, and this time it didn't sound like a joke. It sounded like a starting gun. The last thing I saw before we went back toward the panel room was the orange edge of the county notice taped to the back door, bright against worn paint like the diner had been tagged with a countdown. And I realized I wasn't waiting for my date anymore. I was waiting for the next failure point in a system that liked to punish the people who showed up. My phone buzzed again before I even got my gloves back on. Unknown number. Stop creating paperwork. I didn't show it to Katalea right away. Not because I wanted to hide anything from her, but because fear spreads faster than facts, and I'd learned raising a kid on a tight schedule that you don't wake the whole house for a noise you haven't identified. I took a screenshot, saved it in a folder labeled with the diner's name and the date, and muted the thread. Evidence first, noise later. Katalea returned from the counter carrying a stack of printed receipts like they were dirty dishes. She slid them onto the prep table beside my open tool bag. "Found these in the register drawer," she said. "Parts, repairs, cash." The paper smelled like old grease and cheap ink. I scanned the line items and felt my neck tighten. Used transformer no return. Electrical tape, bulk. MISC connectors, assorted. There was a scribble in the margin that wasn't a store stamp. A name, Mitchell Miller. Katalea watched my eyes track the ink. "He does fixes," she said. The word clipped like it hurt her teeth, then disappears when it's time to answer for them. Inspector Kelly's voice echoed in my head. "Owner has been addressing it for 6 months. Problem. Unpermitted work tied to the owner. Method. Correct the hazard. Document chain of responsibility. And build an inspection-proof compliance plan with dates." Outcome. The diner becomes safer, but the owner's leverage gets threatened, and people with leverage don't like losing it. Do you have anything with his signature? I asked. Catalea didn't hesitate. She reached under the counter and pulled out that thin, creased envelope, again the acting manager agreement, and added another sheet. A one-page authorization with the owner's letterhead. This is what I have, she said. And it's a trap, Johnny. It gives me the keys and the blame. It gives him the right to replace me without notice. She tapped the paper twice with her fingernail. Tap, tap, like a judge's gavel, smaller. And, she added, voice lower, he keeps the safe code. The vendor account card. The payroll login. If he wants to hurt me, he doesn't have to shout. He can just make things stop. That was the second anchor, now fully explicit. Not vague threats, systems control. I swallowed once. My mouth felt dry the way it does before I open a live panel. Okay, I said. Then we take your trap and turn it into a ladder. Catalea's brow furrowed. How? With documentation that protects you, I said, and a work authorization that's clean, dated, and witnessed. Something the county respects more than a man's mood. She looked at the receipts again, then at Sage, still wiping the same spot of counter like it could erase history. Catalea? Sage asked softly. Are we closing? Catalea's shoulders lifted like she was carrying a full tray. Then she set it down with her voice. No, she said. We're getting compliant. Sage blinked. The words sounded big in her mouth. Okay, she whispered, and went back to filling napkin holders like she'd been given a job, and that was enough to keep her from shaking. I pulled out my carbonless form book and wrote a more formal report header. Date, time, location, observed fault, corrective action, recommendations. I added a section titled Prior UN-permitted work, disclosed by management, and listed the receipts as attachments. Catalea watched me write like she was watching someone stitch a wound. Can you do that? She asked. Yeah, I said, but it has to be true and it has to be complete. Half-truths are what inspectors smell. Her gaze stayed on the paper. My dad used to say paper is real, she said, almost to herself, because it outlives excuses. There it was, the personal stake finally arriving at the surface, but not as a late sentimental reveal. It came out like a tool she'd used before. He left this place to me, she added, and her fingers tightened on the edge of the counter. Not money, not safety, just this. And if it shuts down, it's not just a business. It's the only thing he left with my name on it. No big speech, one clean line, enough. I nodded once. Then we keep it open the right way. Connor Bailey texted again. Donuts still available. Also, I checked. Mitchell's been flagged before for unpermitted work. Want me to swing by? I typed back, yes. Be a witness. Bring the sugar. By the time Connor arrived, the diner had thinned the late-night regulars. A pair of truckers, a tired couple splitting fries, and one older woman at the counter who looked like she'd been born with opinions. Connor walked in carrying a donut box like it was a peace treaty. He took one look at Inspector Kelly's orange notice on the back door and whistled low. That's not great. Catalea didn't smile. Welcome to my week. Connor set the donuts down and nodded toward me. You collect emergencies like they're coupons. Sit, I told him. You're on standby. Connor raised an eyebrow. As what? As proof, I said. And as the guy who says, I saw it if someone tries to rewrite tonight. Connor's humor softened into something steadier. Got it. Catalea moved behind the counter, started organizing a folder, my report, the receipts, the acting manager agreement, the notice. The folder became a spine. The diner needed one. The next morning, my kid's teacher, Gemma Carter, met me at the classroom door with a permission slip and the kind of look adults give when they're trying not to judge you. Field trip fee is due today, she said. I rubbed my forehead. My wallet felt heavier than it should have. I'll pay it, I said. Gemma's gaze flicked to my work boots. You working double again? Something like that. She nodded once, not prying. Just, don't disappear on your kid's schedule. He's been watching the door a lot. That line followed me out to my truck like a weight I couldn't set down. Why I bought in wasn't romance. It wasn't hero fantasy. It was this. I knew what happened when adults failed quietly. Kids learned the wrong lessons. When I pulled into the diner lot again, the neon sign was off. The window looked darker without it. Catalea met me at the counter with coffee already poured, sat down beside my paperwork without a word. Not fancy, not sentimental, practical. I took a sip and felt heat spread through my fingers around the cup. Inspector Kelly said 72 hours, she said. But he also said he can move faster if there's another complaint. That's true, I said. Public complaints can trigger an expedited reinspection, depending on the county workload. Catalea's eyes sharpened. So the rumor could become a weapon. Exactly, I said. We get ahead of it. Problem. Social pressure weaponized into official action. Method. Stabilize the electrical system, create a documented compliance plan, and pre-request a scheduled reinspection with proof, so the county sees control, not chaos. Outcome. Less vulnerability to surprise enforcement. I opened my laptop on the back office desk and started a load calculation sheet. I asked Catalea to turn appliances on, one by one. Fryer, grill ignition, heat lamps, coffee warmers. I measured current draw with a clamp meter and logged it. Numbers are calmer than rumors. Sage stood by the window, eyes on the lights like she was watching a heart monitor. Flicker? I called. Not this time, she said, relief cracking her voice. Catalea watched Sage with a small softness pride she didn't announce. I printed labels and applied them to outlets and switches. I built a panel directory that actually matched the circuits. I took time-stamped photos of every corrected junction box and every tightened lug. Connor leaned over my shoulder. You label like you're mad at the universe. I label like I want to pass inspection, I said. That's what I said, Connor replied. By midday, we had a binder of proof thick enough to make an inspector's hands happy. Report, photos, receipts, disclosure, directory, mitigation, checklist, and a permit application draft for the next phase. Catalea picked up the phone and called Mitchell Miller again. Straight to voicemail. She didn't curse. She didn't beg. She wrote, "No answer," with the time beside it. Then her phone buzzed. She read, and her face went still. What? I asked. Catalea turned the screen toward me. A local community board post, someone had taken a photo of the orange notice on the back door. Caption. Diner has dangerous wiring. County coming. Don't eat there. Shares. 14. Comments, already growing. Catalea's knuckles went white around the phone. He's trying to kill us before the inspector does, she said. Connor leaned in. That's Mitchell. He's not subtle. He's just lazy. I didn't argue the name yet. I didn't have proof it was him. But I had a plan for the problem in front of me. We respond with facts. I said, not emotion. We post the conditional status, the corrective action, and the scheduled plan. And we invite customers to see documentation. Sage swallowed. Won't that scare them more? It scares the wrong people, Catalea said, steadying. The right people stay. She walked to the printer, pulled out a one-page statement, and started writing in block letters, like she was drafting a sign for a storm shelter. Electrical issue identified and corrected by licensed electrician. Documentation available upon request. Next inspection scheduled through county process. We are open and compliant with current safety requirements. No defensiveness, no drama. She taped it beside the register with clean, straight strips of tape, then looked up. Table by table, she said, not asking. I'll tell them. And she did. She walked through the diner with coffee pot in hand, refilling cups, and said the same sentence like a steady metronome. If you have concerns, I can show you the report. Some people left. A few. Most stayed. The older woman at the counter tilted her head and said, That owner of yours ever show his face? Catalea didn't look at me. She kept her eyes on the customer. Not when the work is hard, she said. The older woman snorted. Figures? Microjoy came from the smallest places. A trucker slid a $5 bill into the tip jar and said, I like places that fix things instead of hiding them. Catalea's shoulders dropped a fraction. She didn't smile big. She just nodded once like she'd been given permission to breathe. Then my phone buzzed an email notification from the county office. Subject, reinspection status update complaint escalation. I opened it and felt my stomach drop. Due to increased public complaint activity and documented concern, an expedited reinspection has been scheduled. Date, March 20. Time, 9 a.m. Catalea saw my face before I said anything. What is it? She asked. I turned the laptop so she could read. The room didn't explode. It went quiet. The kitchen clock ticked too loud. The fridge compressor kicked on with a tired groan. Rain started again outside, soft at first, then heavier, like the sky had decided to join the pressure. They moved it up, she said, voice flat. Yeah, I replied. Formal trigger. Complaint escalation. Cataleya's hand hovered over the binder like she wanted to hold something that couldn't vanish. I can't lose this, she said. And for the first time since I met her voice shook once, just once before she forced it still. I didn't answer with comfort slogans. I answered with a plan. Okay, I said. We triage. We fix what's inspection critical. We document what's scheduled with permit filing. And we create a clean work authorization so the owner can't pin this on you. Cataleya stared at the acting manager agreement envelope like it was a snake. He can replace me, she said. Not if you make the record bigger than his story, I said. Paper beats performance. Connor cleared his throat. I'm here, he said. I'll witness whatever you need. Cataleya nodded. Then she did something that told me who she really was. She looked at Sage. Sage, she said, go take your break. Eat something. Then come back and run the floor like you belong here. Sage blinked like she hadn't expected permission to be a person. Okay, she whispered. Cataleya turned back to me. Her eyes were tired, sharp, and real. Johnny, she said, I'm going to ask you for something that sounds big. I waited again. Let the ask land. I want to hire you for the full compliance project, she said. Not a favor, a contract, with dates. And I want it signed in front of a witness. Connor lifted a donut like a gavel. I can do witness. I swallowed, thinking of my kid's schedule, my own exhaustion, the field trip fee I'd just paid. Thinking of Gemma's line, he's been watching the door a lot. Then I looked at Cataleya's binder, the notice, the rumor post, the clause that could replace her, and the way she'd still sent Sage to eat. This wasn't romance. This was character. Okay, I said. We do it clean. Cataleya exhaled like she'd been holding air since last week. She slid a blank form across the desk. Scope? Hours? Rate? Dates? She said. No vague promises. I pulled out my pen. March 6, I said, pointing to the calendar. Today. Documentation complete. March 20, Cataleya said, writing it down in bold. Expedited reinspection. April 30, I added. Final compliance deadline. Connor leaned in. You two sound like you're planning a heist. Cataleya didn't look up. This is a heist, she said. We're stealing back our right to stay open. She signed first, no trembling. A clean signature. I signed next. Connor signed as witness and wrote his phone number under it, then paused. Do I regret being this helpful? He asked aloud. You'll regret it if we lose, I said. Connor nodded. Fair. Cataleya tucked the signed contract into the binder like it was fragile. Then she looked at me and said, quietly, Thank you for not treating me like I'm helpless. The words hit me harder than any flirt line would have, because they weren't romance. They were respect. My phone buzzed again, unknown number, same thread. Last warning, stop. I saved the screenshot, added it to the binder's evidence section, and finally looked up. Cataleya, I said. I got a text. She didn't panic. She didn't ask for comfort. She held out her hand. Show me, she said. And I did. Cataleya didn't raise her voice when she said, Today, she reached under the counter, pulled out the diner's incident log, a cheap notebook with a cracked spine, and flipped to a clean page. Then she set her phone beside it, screen up, and looked at me like we were about to do something boring and powerful. What do we do? Sage asked from the end of the counter. She had a plate of fries in her hands like she'd grabbed the first solid thing she could find. Cataleya didn't soften for the room. She softened for Sage. We document, she said. Then we keep working. Connor leaned on the booth like he owned it, donut box open, and nodded once. I love paperwork, he said, deadpan. It makes terrible people itchy. I took a breath and made my voice the calm version, the one that gets through emergencies without turning into a performance. Step 1, I said. We save every message, screenshots, timestamps. Step 2, we tie every decision to a date and a deliverable. Step 3, we communicate with the inspector in writing so the county sees we're in control. Cataleya wrote the steps down in the log, neat block letters. When she finished, she tapped the page with the pen like she was pinning it to the wall. Okay, she said. Call Inspector Kelly. Now? Connor asked. Now, Katalea repeated. If the reinspection was moved up because of complaint escalation, then we give the county a better story. Corrective action in progress, harassment documented, owner interference suspected. Sage's eyes widened. We can tell them that? We can tell them what is true, I said. And we can show proof. Katalea dialed, put it on speaker, and held the phone like a tool. Kelly answered on the second ring. Kelly, this is Katalea Cook, acting manager, she said. We received an expedited reinspection notice due to public complaint escalation. We're prepared. We also received harassment messages after we began compliance documentation. There was a pause. Paper rustled on his end. Harassment from whom? Kelly asked. Katalea didn't guess. She didn't point without proof. She looked at me, and I recognized the discipline in her restraint. Unknown number, she said, but the content references the owner's property and objects to documentation. We have screenshots with timestamps. Kelly's voice stayed flat, but the air around it changed. Email them to the office, he said. Include your case number. We will, she replied. And, I added, leaning in, we've created a mitigation plan and a permit application draft for the next phase. We can forward those too. Kelly didn't respond with praise. He responded with process, which was better. Send it, he said. March 20th stands. Be ready. Katalea ended the call and immediately wrote, called county sent evidence in the incident log with the time. Connor whistled low. I'm oddly proud of all of you. Katalea set the pen down, then picked it up again like she couldn't afford to stop moving. Next, she said. The next step was the one she didn't want to say out loud. We confront him, she said. With witnesses. My stomach tightened, not because I was afraid of Mitchell Miller in a dramatic way, but because I'd seen men like him. Men who turn every room into a stage and then accuse you of acting when you refuse to play your part. Controlled setting, I said. Public. Daylight. Counter between you and him. Katalea nodded. He always comes in around dinner rush, she said. To be seen. Connor lifted his coffee like a salute. Perfect. That night, the diner filled up the way it always did when rain threatened. Truckers, families, the exhausted people who want hot food and a place that doesn't ask questions. The neon open sign glowed steady in the window like it had decided to prove something. I worked the back office table like it was a command station. Permit drafts, parts lists, photos. I kept my phone face down unless I needed it. Because constant checking is how anxiety eats the edges of your competence. Katalea ran the floor with a rhythm that didn't look panicked. That mattered. People, smell, panic. Sage moved smoother, too. She made mistakes, small ones, but she corrected them without freezing, and Katalea didn't humiliate her. She just redirected with a touch on the ticket rail and a quiet, this one first. Then the bell rang. Mitchell Miller walked in like the building owed him a welcome. He wore a jacket that looked expensive enough to imply success, and he smiled wide enough to make strangers think he was generous. That smile tightened the moment he saw the binder on the counter. Katalea, he said, voice warm and public. Heard you've been busy. Katalea didn't step back. She didn't step forward either. She stayed where she was, counter between them. Binder in front of her, Sage beside her, Connor in a booth with a clear view. I've been doing my job, she said. Mitchell's gaze slid to me like I was a stain. And you? He said. Still here. I'm scheduled, I said. Plain. Not defensive. Mitchell chuckled like that was cute. You're not an employee. You're not family. Why are you still here? My chest tightened, and I felt the old urge to answer with a speech. I didn't. I'm the licensed electrician attached to the compliance file, I said. That's why. Mitchell's smile twitched. Compliance file, he repeated, like the phrase offended him. Katalea opened the binder and slid one page forward my formal report, signed and dated, with attached photos and the receipt disclosure. We received harassment messages after documentation started, she said, keeping her voice level. We forwarded evidence to the county. Mitchell's eyes narrowed. You told the county about texts? I told the county the truth, Katalea said. Sage swallowed hard but didn't move. That was her growth, right there staying present. Mitchell leaned in, lowering his voice as if privacy gave him power. You're making yourself a problem, he said. Katalea didn't flinch. I'm making the diner safe, she replied. Mitchell's jaw tightened. You don't have authority to sign contracts. Katalea slid the acting manager agreement forward. The same creased envelope. and tapped the replacement clause with her fingernail. I do, she said. You gave it to me. And yes, I see the clause. You can replace me whenever you want. Mitchell's smile returned, sharp. Exactly. Catalea looked him in the eye. If you replace me during a safety investigation, she said, I'll file it as retaliation and interference with compliance. In writing. With dates. The county already has the paper trail. Mitchell blinked. Just once. It was small, but it mattered. Connor's voice floated from the booth, cheerful. I'm a witness, by the way. Mitchell's gaze snapped toward Connor. Who are you? Connor raised his coffee. A guy who saw you walk in and threaten your acting manager on a night with a packed room. Mitchell's mouth opened, then closed. The room had gotten quieter. Forks paused. People were listening without meaning to. This was one of those moments where the air shifts. Not romance, not drama for drama's sake, just the pressure of accountability entering a public space. Mitchell turned back to Catalea. You think paperwork will save you? He said. No, she replied. Work will. Paperwork makes it visible. Mitchell's eyes cut to me again. And you, he said, voice turning colder. You're going to regret getting involved. I kept my hands still, kept my voice calm. Don't send messages you don't want in a case file, I said. Mitchell's smile vanished. Are you accusing me? He snapped. I didn't answer with accusation. I answered with process. I'm documenting interference, I said. If it wasn't you, then you have nothing to worry about. Mitchell stared at me like he wanted me to blink first. Catalea didn't wait for the stare down to finish. She slid another document forward, a new one. Clean, printed, dated. Here's what happens next, she said. You sign a non-interference clause for the compliance period and an escrowed repair credit from diner revenue so invoices get paid on schedule. Or you don't. And we document that too. Mitchell laughed once. Harsh. Escrow? You're a waitress. Catalea's voice didn't rise. It sharpened. I'm the person keeping your property from being shut down, she said. The room went quiet in a way I felt in my bones. Mitchell looked around, searching for support. He found faces that didn't care about his jacket. He found hunger and tiredness, and the simple human preference for places that stay open. He reached for the paper. I placed my hand on the binder, not on him, not blocking his body, just stopping the grab. If you want a copy, I said, we make copies. You don't take the only original. Mitchell's nostrils flared. Then, because he still wanted to look like the good guy, he forced a smile and pulled his hand back. Fine, he said through his teeth. Fine. Give me your little paper. Catalea slid him the signature line and a pen. He signed. His handwriting looked angry. Connor leaned forward. I witnessed that, he said, and wrote his name beside the witness field. Mitchell's eyes flashed, but he couldn't undo ink without making a scene. He hated scenes that made him look small. He shoved the pen down and said, Happy now? Catalea didn't answer like a victor. She answered like a manager. I'll be happy when we pass inspection, she said. Mitchell turned and left without ordering anything, the bell ringing behind him like a verdict. Sage exhaled so hard she laughed, then clapped a hand over her mouth. Catalea looked at her. You okay? Sage nodded fast. Yes, yeah, I just thank you. Catalea's face softened. Go refill coffee, she said. Normal things. We keep it normal. And the diner did. The fryer hissed. Plates clinked. The neon stayed steady. Microhook, tender. When the rush thinned, Catalea set the signed clause into the binder and said, I'm going to sleep tonight. For real. March 20th came with cold rain and a sky the color of old metal. I arrived early, because being early is how you control panic. Connor arrived early, too, holding a donut box and looking more serious than usual. Sage had the counter wiped, menus aligned, statement printed, binder open to the right tab. Catalea had her keys and her spine in the same place, centered. Inspector Kelly walked in at 9. Exactly. He looked around slower than before. He saw the posted statement. He saw the binder. He saw the labels. He didn't smile, but he didn't scan the room like he expected lies. Show me, he said. We did. Tool lock, clamp meter, torque screwdriver, labeled directory, time-stamped photo set, deliverable lock, permit application filed, compliance plan dated, signed non-interference clause, escrow credit schedule, arena lock, panel room, junction boxes, Back office with binder and receipts. Kelly checked the panel directory and ran a finger down the neat list. You updated and verified the directory, he said, to me. Yes, I replied. He looked at Katalea. And you maintained control of the process, he said. Yes, she answered. Kelly turned a page and paused at the non-interference clause, the signature visible. Mitchell Miller signed this? He asked. Katalea nodded once. In front of witnesses. Connor lifted his coffee cup like it was evidence. That's me, Kelly's pen scratched. Then he looked at Katalea again. You understand, he said, that further unpermitted work will result in immediate closure. I understand, she said. That's why we stopped it. Kelly checked the junction box we'd corrected. He tested the sign transformer. He watched my meter readings without interrupting. Then he wrote for a long moment, tore off a sheet, and handed it to Katalea. Conditional pass remains, he said. Final compliance deadline, April 30th. No extensions if complaints continue. Katalea took the paper with both hands. Her fingers trembled once, then steadied. We'll be ready, she said. Kelly's eyes moved to me. You're attached to the compliance file. Stay attached. I will, I said. Kelly left. The bell rang. The diner exhaled. We weren't finished, but we weren't cornered anymore. Microhook. Threat. On April 29th, the night before final inspection, the overhead lights flickered once, just once, and Katalea's face went pale. The flicker hit me like a needle to the nervous system. Katalea didn't call with panic. She called with information. Johnny, she said, voice tight. One flicker. 10 minutes ago. Any load changes? I asked. No, she said. Same as always. Problem. Last-minute uncertainty before final inspection. Method. Immediate safe check. Isolate exterior circuit. Verify connections. Document with timestamp. Outcome. Remove risk or identify the fault before morning. I'm turning around, I said. She paused. Is that safe for you? Your kid. Connor has him tonight, I said. I'll be there in 15. Rain had stopped, leaving the air cold and wet. The parking lot lights reflected off the asphalt like it didn't forgive mistakes. I walked in and smelled coffee, bleach, and nervous hope. Katalea stood by the counter with the binder hugged to her chest like it was a shield. Her eyes tracked me, and I saw how much she'd been holding back. I didn't hug her. I didn't say anything dramatic. I opened my tool bag and went straight to the panel room. I checked the main. Stable. Branch circuit. Stable. Then I checked the exterior lighting circuit feeding the parking lot fixtures. One connection read slightly higher resistance than it should, enough to cause a momentary flicker when a fixture cycled. Not catastrophic, but enough to lose sleep. I tightened the lug to spec, verified the reading, and took a time-stamped photo with the meter display in frame. Then I wrote a diagnostic note. Date, time, observed symptom, corrective action, verification. I walked back to the counter and handed the note to Katalea. Add it to the binder, I said. Now you have proof. You responded immediately. Katalea took it with both hands. Her shoulders dropped like someone had cut a rope. She exhaled and said, very quietly, Thank you. I nodded. Lock the binder in the safe, I said. Then go home. She shook her head. I have to close. I'll wait, I said. Out front. Lights on. Visible. No drama. Katalea hesitated, then nodded once like she was accepting help without surrendering control. When she finished closing, she stepped into the entryway with her keys in hand. The diner was quiet behind her, chairs upside down on tables, neon still glowing in the window. Steady. Stubborn. You're always working late, she said, not accusing. Just fact. Yeah, I admitted. She looked at me like she was weighing something that wasn't romantic. Something more dangerous. Trust. Then she asked, soft and plain, Are you working late again? I looked at the neon, then back at her. Just waiting for you, I said. This time it wasn't a line. It was an operational statement. I was here until she was safely done. Katalea reached into her pocket and pulled out a spare diner key. She held it between us, metal catching the parking lot light. She didn't hand it over yet. Microhook. Tender. Tomorrow, she said. And her voice sounded like a door opening without making a sound. April 30th arrived clear, cold, and bright, the kind of morning that makes Chrome look honest. The diner smelled like fresh coffee and fresh paint. Katalea had touched up the back door herself. A quiet refusal to let the building look like it was losing. Connor sat in a booth with my kid's crayon drawing on the table stick figures under a bright yellow light. He'd brought it because my kid insisted, "Daddy, fix his lights." Seeing it there tightened something in my throat. Not romance. Life. Inspector Kelly arrived at 9, clipboard in hand. Mitchell Miller didn't show. That absence felt like a small victory and a small warning. People like him prefer power when it's invisible. Today, it wasn't. Catalea stood at the counter with the binder open, safe behind her, neon steady. Kelly walked the site with methodical steps. He checked labels, tested circuits, reviewed permits, flipped through the binder. He paused at the escrow credit schedule and the signed non-interference clause. "You maintained compliance," he said, to Catalea. "Yes," she replied. He turned to me. "Work is documented," he said. "Correct." He wrote for a long minute, tore off the final sheet, and handed it to Catalea. "Pass," he said. "Full compliance." The word landed in the room like a bell. Sage clapped once, then again, then laughed like she couldn't help it. Connor whistled low, proud, and relieved. Catalea stared at the paper. Her hands trembled. She pressed it to the counter like she needed the laminate to hold her up. Then she did the thing that mattered. She lifted the paper where staff and customers could see and said, "We're staying open." No speech. Just a fact with proof. The older woman at the counter nodded like she'd watched an equation finally balance. Catalea turned to me and finally extended the spare key. "I'm not offering you anything you didn't earn," she said quietly. "I'm offering you a place that's safe, if you want it." I took the key with 2 fingers, careful. The metal was cool, solid. I slid it onto my key ring. It clicked against my house key, same weight, same metal. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't scan the room for exits. Outside, the neon stayed on. No buzz, no flicker, just steady light. Mitchell's car never came back. That was enough. Catalea looked at the key on my ring, then back at me. "This is Johnny Stewart," she said to the room, voice clear, practical, and safe for any algorithm to hear. Connor raised his coffee like a quiet salute. Sage smiled without shaking. I didn't need a label. I had proof. I had a key. I had a schedule that suddenly felt less like a trap. Catalea reached under the counter, pulled out the binder, and slid one more page into it. The final pass notice, then snapped it closed. "Come back tomorrow," she told me. "Not because something's broken, because we're open." I nodded once. "I will." She turned, flipped the open sign on even though it was already on, like she wanted to hear the click again. The neon glowed steady in the window, and this time the bell over the door didn't sound like it was laughing. It sounded like it was welcoming us.